So, looking at Meltham Chap, or Meltham, if you want to call it Meltham or Meltham, either one or the other, and Morden Tom, that's how it's written. I'm kind of looking into what the meanings are for it, because they've got them as the secondary name on the place names. So for Tom, I think it's it. I've got a couple of things queued up to mention. Um, like the famous song that you sing on New Year's to start a new year, end of one period into another period. That Old Lang Syne. It's like Old Lang Syne. I think that it's like it's a little bit like time, but it's Tom. Spent some time. Spent some time. But like Old Lang Syne is meant to be to do with time as well, isn't it? But anyway, it says this is what they've got in this names.org for Tom. It says it's for treat that you always are. A is for accepting, forgiving nature. U is for upstanding and honourable way to be. M is for munificent if you're extremely liberal in giving. And E is for excellence, passion and drive. I'm not too sure if that's correct or not. But on here it's got for Tom. Tom means, and it says for name. T in the name Tom means you like hanging out with friends when you have time. You enjoy the company of others in social gatherings. Great imagination, your finest talent. Use appropriately. Enjoy the riches and honour. Change of surroundings. I think this is more like be very quiet if you have something. I think this is actually, to be honest, I think this definition is not straight out of the dictionary. I think it's that one there is more like a sort of just like on the meanings of a name. Saying it's not listed here. It says Tom, the meaning of this surname is not listed.
Tom. Tom. Tom.
Sounds like Tom, doesn't it, when you pronounce it?
Tom.
But Tom is only short for Thomas. Tom could be Thomas. Thomas could be Tom. Could be short for Tormus, because if you spelled Tormus full, could be Tom. It's a Thomas or Tom, couldn't it? Having a bit of trouble finding out about Tom. Taume. Chap. So yeah, you get chapped skin, right? I think you can chap something to do with horse riding as well. It's like a crack or rough or sewer patch, especially exposure to wind or cold weather. So you could say like Castle Hill is a rough or sewer patch because people are sore about it, or people seem to be. The Huddersfield patch, the Castle Hill patch, seems to be a sore spot for map makers. It seems to be a rough area to cover or to discuss or just put on there straight out. There are issues around it. Let's say that. There are some. It's a rough area to discuss or even put accurately on a map, or someone's a bit sore about it. It's quite windy up there. Exposure to the wind or cold weather. It is actually quite windy up there, chap. So I think like the chap, those natural land formations like at Dunelm, Meltham Cop. It's like Meltham Cop. I think cop comes from chap, to be honest, because it's like exposure to the wind. Because the wind forms those long barrow things, so they're like chaps, aren't they? Or cop. Maybe they were called that by because the word long barrow is only recent. Maybe they were called chaps because they were exposed to the wind or whatever. Because it's very windy up Castle Hill, isn't it? So maybe it were called chap. Meltham chap or Marsden chap. But there's that name Helme as well next to the name Helm is next to Meltham because he's got the name Helm. And we know that the one had Upper Helm as well on it as well, and we know the whole area was helmet. But the thing with helmet is what I want to go on to talking about helmets, because the Celtic helmets were shaped like Liberty Cap shape, right? That's the traditional design. Now, the Roman helmets, who came in to invade, had those plumes on the top, which had that long shape. Now, I think it's a big deal, the Roman army coming in to invade. And, you know, if the burial mounds are a round shape, if the druid or the religious powers are associated with long barrows, and that is some sort of religious or spiritual power, if you've got an army, if you're wanting to intimidate your opposing opposition, and you bring an entire army in to attack them, and you want your army to look powerful and dominant, if you see on the top of those helmets with those kind of rainbow, it's actually like a rainbow plume. It actually looks like they've got a rainbow on the head, or they've got a long barrow over the head. And when Cambodunum, you know, like the fort by the bend in the river, and I said that, well, the camel's hump, Cambodunum, is like it's just literally the bend shape, because a camel's hump has got to draw it. You draw the bend shape. But also the long barrow mounds are like a bend shape. So on the top of those Roman helmets, I'll show you in a second, it is sort of like that. So I'll just show you now. So the Roman helmets have got that shape on the top. But the only thing is, it's meant to be the Gauls, the French, and the Spanish have cairns as well, don't they? And dolmens. And the Britain, you know, the English cultures, you know, the Neolithic cultures that are meant to be known for long barrow shapes and also, you know, rainbows and things like that. But the Roman army is not really known for that. But if they're coming over to take a conquest of the country and want to make the people who they're you know, because obviously they're marching through lots of villages and things like that. If they want to look superior and powerful, then you see, it's almost like on the top, it's almost like a long barrow shape on the top, isn't it? Not just a normal mound, but it's almost like the long barrows. So if they're coming to wipe out and conquer the Druids, they want to appear to have been more powerful than the Druids, or even have their knowledge or whatever. And also, like, you know, if you're not scared, apparently the Celts weren't afraid of dying. So to try and make it like your Roman soldiers aren't afraid of dying, there's nothing different to having like the shape of a barrow that you usually get buried in for a burial barrow, not the temple type of style ones, but the burial, when actually head's underneath it already, your skull. So if you're not scared of dying, because his head's already in a barrow. But then if you've got sort of the rainbow, you know, all the different colours of the rainbow, because I think you know, like the baptism and the reborn again experience is meant to be where the Celts got the fear, you know, they got over the fear of dying from, you know. So you see, Caesar doesn't talk about any of this. Caesar doesn't talk about this, but you see, look, it's like the long barrow shape on the top, right? But it's meant to be the previous Neolithic and then going into the Iron Age of the Gauls and the British. The Druid order was all over Europe, but you see that's one thing that people don't mention to do with those helmets. You see, the actual helmets of the Celts, when you type in Celtic helmet, is the Liberty Cap shape, which is more just like the burial mound and not like the long barrows. So it's more burial mound shape and more symbolic to the Liberty Cap, which might, you know, be more symbolic to the, you know, the rebirth experience, the religious experience. But it's not the long barrow style, which is more only to the Druid order, you know. And I think that if all Celts had chapels and cairns and all these temples, smaller chapels all around the country, which they were all baptized into that religious order, you know, with the psychedelic experience, then the warriors and all the people of the villages would be familiar with and symbolise that in the culture. And that goes to me to show it stands for, like the round houses they had, because even the roofs on those round houses are that shape. So it's like the whole civilization. The whole civilization is based on the burial mounds and the round houses and the Liberty Cap. Symbolic. You see, all these Celtic helmets are like that. But then I think those ones aren't actually meant to be real. They're more elaborate with the two things on. But when you get the Romans coming in, you see, now the Romans are well known. This is meant to be the Roman helmet, and they even ended up getting Celts on their side. They're recruiting the Spanish and they're recruiting the Gauls, and then as they're conquering places in Britain, they get them signed up. Now, when they're actually fighting the Druids and wiping the Druids' religion out, before Christianity is even legal, let's not forget, if you want to be more powerful than the Druid order, if they're associated more with the long barrows, if they are associated with all the long barrows, and there's a central long barrows that are big ones, you need your entire army to be more powerful, And I think that is, it's the rainbow shape and it's the burial mount shape with the skull under it, and it's all like the long barrows as well. So that is one intimidating factor. Now, we know that some of the ancient stories that come over in Latin are from the Greeks to do with the Trojan horse, which is a massive horse that they got inside. Now, all the Romans were saying that, the Celts were macabre because they were putting people in massive, those wicker men, those huge wooden men, and then they were setting the criminals on fire or whatever in the huge... but I think that was an idea that the Celts came up with to intimidate the Romans, you see, because the well-known, educated people who know the classical stories of each culture, then all the academics know the stories of Homer and about the Trojan horse because it was quite a way back. So, if they come up with an idea to intimidate them, we'll do a big man on fire, not a big horse on fire. And I think it was, it wasn't this horrible culture that they had. I think the Romans were reporting it. It was just something that come up because they were having an invasion and war. Now, obviously, to intimidate them back, it's almost like Churchill, isn't it? Well, I was just saying in the other video, like, they pulled out Churchill out of they pulled Churchill out of the bag. All right, we'll play Churchill, right? They played Churchill, like, for all meant to be symbolising all the barrows and mounds in the war. They're putting all those concrete bunkers around, like that dwarfy place, in Scotland. And they're meant to have Churchill, but really all we've got to remember around the coastline now, there's concrete barriers and bunkers for war, and you don't associate them with religion. So, it's and all those, even well before the war, they're not wanting to acknowledge the proper places on the map. They're either putting it somewhere else or moving it around or missing it out. You know what I mean? There's something. So you could say, like, all the Roman soldiers, in a similar way to how we had Churchill for morale and as a name for the Prime Minister during the war, for whatever motivations that war was, and taking into account that half the other countries all abdicated because of civil wars and this and that, and it just ended up with mainly the British monarchy. And the one went over to America, they don't even have a monarchy over there, it's the United States, and Australia's meant to be Commonwealth. The German are abdicating, after Mountbatten's married into family over here, and then the Russian as well, the Russian royal family. It's almost like an early Churchill, but instead of your leader being called Churchill, you have your army kitted out like that for the country that you're attacking and invading for superiority. Do you see what I'm saying? So, see, if you look at later on to the Viking helmets, now the Viking helmets, and it's been on a television programme that has noted this as well, and I agree with it. It's actually been on a proper TV programme, a BBC one. They were saying that, look at the Viking helmets, they do have kind of a mushroomy shape incorporated into them, but they're very samurai warrior looking. Now, the Vikings and, all the cultures from the east going over towards the steppe, and that links onto, that is heading in the direction of Mongolia and China, So, and they're well known for the metalworking on the samurai swords and that. So it's clear that the Vikings have a lot of influence from the East, from the Far East, because it's very, very samurai style like that on there. And they've even got the detail, they're partaking in religious and psychedelic experience because they've got all the fine detail on there, which is what comes out in those experiences. Like the artwork is inspired by it. Although these were some of the more elaborate helmets and expensive ones, I think you see they have got some kind of like the Celt ones, but I think those are the earlier ones. It definitely is getting. That's a late stage when they're getting up with the technology, but the Roman one definitely is significant. Now, the thing is, the Romans referred to our area as the Brigantes, and they acknowledged the god Bridget. And I said a bridge is like an elongation, almost like the long barrows, but they've got like the bridge sort of on the head, on the helmet of the Romans. Now, whether they lied about the name of it or not, I don't know. Now, after the Romans leave, then we've got all our area has got a name and reference to as helmet. Now, was it a helmet before or after? Now, the thing is that the Romans are well known for the helmets for all the reasons I've just said. The Romans were well known for the helmets, so they might have ended up calling it that because of that. But the actual hill fort at the top of the hill one at what's now Waterloo, that is a Liberty Cap shape, and that is more the shape of the actual Liberty Caps than of the helmets of the Celts. Unless they actually reshaped the whole hill, the entire hill into that shape, and it's a big burial mound, like left them good and buried. I mean, look at that. The top of the helmet's kind of like a burial mound in the rim. Anyway, so if that was a hill fort, I don't think they could have possibly completely levelled it, but they might have formed it to symbolise them being, finished and over. You know what I mean? But obviously Castle Hill was still there, and then Meltham Chap, or Dunelm. I wanted to mention that because I don't think that anyone said that when we've been learning about it, and I think that to say that it's important to raise it and point it out. So there are some named chaps left. So exposure to the cold or wind, so it's almost like being up on there with all the wind, but also there's a sewer spot on the maps because they're not wanting to mention it. So there's some tension issue. There's a rough patch still between the opposing cultures almost. That the Welsh, Irish, Celts, and the Caleb. So that other word that I mentioned earlier. It's Tom. That Tom, if you translate it to Irish, is actually Caleb. Or sorry, Caib. 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 Caib can mean, in between English and Irish, top. So this is when you get Tom. Timony, Capal, Timony, Caib. So it's like a cabman or a cab horse or a cabbie. So it's like something that pulls something, isn't it? That's interesting. There was a guy later with a name Gallop, actually. So on the map, I just want to... Hold on. You see, on this map that I've just done the other video of, it says authorities on there, and it's got in the King's Arms on there, it says as well. But you see, it's got the horse. He's just done a little illustration at the top, and he's done like the shield. He's got the horse on there. It's almost like the Uffington horse, like a white horse. It's not a dark horse either. He's got this horse running on there. Now, we've got these words that are Tom and chap, and some of them are talking mentioning cabby and horse. Now, we know there's something serious going on this map, because he's not putting things in the right places, and he does that hill with something on it, but he does it not where it's supposed to be. I've put a circle around it. Because on the other map, he does the mound at Robin Hood's grave, which is wrong place. And then here he does it at this quarry. He does a little bit of a hill with a little stone or kind of crook sort of shape on it. And he does it in the wrong place, way north. Well, not way north, but it's in the kind of general area, but he didn't do it in the right place. So now, what I want to suggest for this is, if Tom has got something to do with horses, and if he's drawn a horse on here, when I was studying, when we're studying the White Horse at Uffington, because they've got the long barrow there. They've got the long barrow at Uffington, Whale & Smithy. It's a long barrow, right? Got Whale & Smithy long barrow, and then the White Horse, the Uffington camp, and the Little Dragon's Hill, right? Now, what does the white horse symbolise? Was it the area of horses, or was it something? Or is it actually, some people even saying that it's meant to be a dragon? You know, kind of like from star constellation, or you know. Now, if it is a dragon or a horse and it's on the hillside, you know, we've got the hills that are next to the hill forts at our area, but we don't have a white horse on there. But we've got liberties growing there, and when you have those religious experience, some call it the dragon, you know, some call it the dragon experience, because you get these patterns that are like scales on there, but it's like a rainbow pattern, and some refer to it as the dragon. And when the Vikings come over, they draw these dragon engravings in the actual cairns, and it is actually, it's one of their symbols for the deity. We've ended up with the Welsh dragon anyway, you know. So some say that at Uffington, it's a serpent or a dragon, and not necessarily a horse, or it's an amalgamation between both. Now, he's drawn an horse on here for Yorkshire. There is a horse, I think. Isn't there one up somewhere north of York, going up towards First direction, or up towards Whitby or somewhere? I think it's on the way when you go across, when you're going out towards that way. But he's drawn it in just the illustration. I mean, it's interesting that when you put that Tom, and it translates to Caleb in Irish, that you start getting cabbies and horses on there. That's interesting. So we've got Morden Tom, and it's called Marsden now. Now on Speed's map, Speed says it's Marsden. Speed puts Marsden, and then these people put Morden. So, and that's also like Tolkien Mordor, isn't it? Tolkien's got Mordor, the Dark Lord and the Dark Army in Mordor, and all the smog and smoke, which is literally what's happened to West Yorkshire, really. And Huddersfield's just managing to hold on by the skin of its teeth, you know. And then we've got Meltham. You see, you think of ham, really, but the first part is like the word melt. But the Meltham's definitely the same on all of them. But they've got Meltham chap. If you think of the wind, if those chaps is like erosion, when you're on those giant long barrow things and it's really windy up there and the wind's kind of eroding it off and it kind of shapes it, you could really think of it melting away, you know, almost as if, like, you know, it's the erosion of it and being formed into shape is almost like a melting motion, you know. In a way, it is essentially melting, because that's what an ice cube, an ice cube is being eroded and shaped as it melts, isn't it, you know. So there's that. Not sure about that Leg Hill or Legill place, because I don't even know if there's a place called that these days. So, you know, did they change it to Marsden if the hill forts got marked, vandalised, is that when it changed to Marsden? And Mars has got a war after the conflict. Is it Marsden? Or is it Morden? And is it something to do with getting more things up on the moors, like more Liberty Caps on the moors, because there's like a big supply of them, and there's that huge long barrow, that Pool Hill. There's plenty more on there and on the old Pennines, than just at Meltham or when you get to the lower grounds. So, there are those aspects to it as well. Torm. Did time come from Torm? Did the word time actually come from Torm? But no, just a minute. It's the East Riding. It's the West Riding of Yorkshire, isn't it? The Eastern. It's like you got the East Riding and the West Riding of Yorkshire. So like Cabby Horse. So that's riding, isn't it? And then you've got that horse there. So that's where you get the ridings. They've actually got the riding centre in Wakefield, haven't they? But that signifies travelling. People are travelling around and doing stuff, like even going over to Oxfordshire or even over to travelling all around everywhere. It's not much reference to sailing on boats, though, on the river systems. Maybe that was a little bit more earlier, like before the Iron Age. A few things there. I think there's some good, interesting points on the Roman helmet and how we've ended up with where that helm came from. Maybe it wasn't helm before. Why do they call it Brigantes when they came over with bridges on the helmets? But we've got the god Bridget. They said that the god was Bridget, so we've got to grant them something. If that's preserved in the Irish and Scottish, and it definitely was Bridget, and it hadn't been changed or altered, then I think, like what I said earlier about, the long barrows being bridge-shaped, narrow elongations, I think that holds up quite well. And if the god Bridget means to beam out or to project outwards, I think that's something. But when the names keep changing around, what are the reasons for each dominating culture establishing certain names or having the names changed? Ends up being called Elm or Elmet. But we've actually got that helmet. It is the shape of the Celtic helmet. Is that third hill? Is the hill fort, at Waterloo? So unless it got shaped like that symbolically, as in, if they did it in, they vandalised it in, or whether it was too big to. But it's the same shape as Old Oxfordshire, isn't it? And it's pointing in the same direction. And I think it's too big to. Unless you're going to completely and totally level it, why is it the same shape as Oxfordshire and pointing in the same direction? Could it have been a bit bigger, more like that size, That's what I'm thinking. And if they didn't have Google Maps, and if they weren't as clued into the ancient stones alignments like Howard Crowhurst is in with all the alignments, they might not have realised that Old Oxfordshire and that lined up, or they might not have clicked onto it, and then they might not have... vandalised it enough, and now it's discernible that there is a connection. So I think that it is that shape, or it was that shape. So, there's that. There's a lot of I know there's a lot of speculation in this, but this conversation really is not. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong, but I'm putting these things and not openly discussed when they should be considered. People do know about it, the people who used to use these words, and then obviously, the word for a sore spot, or there being a bit of a rough patch about it, or not being straight about it, is clearly evident on all the maps because they're putting things in not where they should be. So there's some friction going on there, there are issues, and it's just like when we had the troubles in Northern Ireland, but at the end of the day, did someone else start the troubles because he wanted, the Irish to look bad, and it made people more affiliated with imperialism side, because you always, if you're going to rule places, you want people to admire you and to respect you and to follow you, particularly if you're going to have a war, and then they're fighting for that side, and then obviously to get Churchill, but if they wanted Churchill as Right, my final point, because I've been going on for another half an hour now, my final point is this, right? If you're going to have Winston Churchill as a freaking Prime Minister leading the war, then why have all the maps that won't have the Churchill in the right place where it's meant to be, moving it around or, saying it's not there, and pretty much plonking, Smog City on there, as if it's Mordor, as if it's Morden, That's my question. So someone is taking the piss out of us, or there's something, it is almost like a sewer spot, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, we love our nation and this country, and this is some of the history, but they've still got a sewer spot which is pre-1066, because then it wasn't their country, and it's not their culture, and it's not their religion, and it's not their heritage before that point. So they've got a sewer spot. So let's say this then, right? I think it's clear to establish that the royals have got a sewer spot for pre-1066 heritage, religion and culture, for celebrating, learning about it properly, and they rather people celebrate and, their own heritage, post that. And if we are going to celebrate anything from pre that era, then it's not going to be our area right in the middle with three massive long barrows. It's going to be, the White Horse at Uffington, or, some of the other things that I'm not saying they're not brilliant or not amazing, because I love everything to do with that culture. But, there are many ill thoughts around the country, many that have been ruined and destroyed. Like they're trying to build the Tay Bridge in Scotland through one of them now. Even the Highways Agency are paying for an archaeological dig. They're even getting on the side of the archaeologists to get them on their side, and they are, actually flying the flag for it, for bulldozing through hill forts, Right, we're building a massive bridge, and, get the Scots on our side, we'll even pay for the archaeology. It's almost like what happened in the war when they said, oh yeah, Churchill, get all those concrete bunkers around the edge. Oh, Scottish, got a bunker of you in Scotland, got a dwarfy of you. Got a concrete dwarfy bunker, right? And then there's bang a load of, right? There's everyone's, shooting out of them. And now all we've got is concrete wall. Every time you think of concrete bunkers, you don't think of dwarfy in Scotland as some sort of religious monument or anything. It's, everything concrete bunkers are to do with war and conflict. It's like you can't go into that area of inquiry, war and conflict. You can't talk about Irish monuments. It's war and conflict, the Troubles. It's like they're branding the proverbial cow with war and conflict if you start to have an interest in it, unless it is the White Horse, which is Oxford, flying the flag for Oxford. Oxford wins, Oxford's the best, Oxford at boat racing, Oxford at ancient sites, Oxford now finding an ancient burial mound inside the university grounds. What a coincidence. Oxford in sport, Oxford in everything, and even in ancient sites. Oh yeah, we like ancient sites, but it's Oxford's ancient sites, and all ours on the map, they won't even put them where it's meant to be on the map. That's the problem. So I'm going to write to Prince Charles, to be honest, and I'll make a video. I'll go in front of the camera and I'll say, look, Charles, you cunt. I'll say, are you taking the piss out of us or what? Because you're prancing around, right? I'm an environmentalist. I'm standing outside in Extinction Rebellion rallies. I'm for the environment and for the countryside, except to shoot a few foxes and, put a few petrol, smoking petrol, engines down badger holes until the, monoxides chokes them to death. It's like, oh yeah, environment. Yeah, Charles, but, you're writing off an entire avenue of religious and historical study in particular certain areas of the country that seem to be a bit of a sore spot, according to this, seem to be a bit of a sore spot. It's sort of, it's like the Red Room, isn't it? It's like Area 57 or whatever. In fact, that is sort of what it is, they've got like Roswell in America, where all the UFO things happen, all the mysterious things happen in Roswell. It's about the Area 57 or whatever it's called. It's like a mysterious area. It's literally like, that is our area on these maps. It's like UFO, it's like, who's moved the fucking thing around? Or who's changed the name of the place. Who's not? If it was one map, fair enough. Like one map with it there, and then Speed's doing it as well, and that's in 1610. You know, Speed wasn't doing it in 1947. He's doing it in 1610, so, you know, there's a sore spot on our maps with our sites, and it really is a sore spot now with, like, Bradford, Wakefield, Bradford and Batley, and Edmondswyke and Dewsbury have all gone to Mordor, with the dark smog and smoke, it's literally, and it's upsetting that Tolkien wrote that story with the Dark Tower and everything like that. It all fits into it. And then he's flying the flag for Oxford. They're not planting Mordor on Uffington Camp or on the Ridgeway. So it's all right if Tolkien saying, "Oh yeah, I don't like all this industry and smog and that lot." Well, yeah, not from when he goes back home, when he's up here, and then it all gets dumped on. Although I do trust Tolkien when he said that he's not a great fan of all the, heavy industry and smog and pollution, but, did his Lord of the Rings story incite the Imperialists to attack us even more, Although at that point, I mean, the tower was built, that Victoria Tower was built when Tolkien was in South Africa when he was just born, so he didn't have a lot to do with that. But they did put the other tower up after when he's passed away. So, or towards when he was passing away. It's clearly evident Tolkien's tied into it because he were there. He was with Haig at university. So, Huddersfield Technical College, and at university as well, at Edinley. So, in that Yorkshire Dialect Society, And this is the thing, when he were wanting to study. He was studying the Yorkshire dialect and lost information. And this is what we need to do now. That's what Tolkien were deployed here doing. He was looking into the Yorkshire dialects and languages as well as teaching at university for any remains of lost information or knowledge from our particular area of the country. And why might he want to find out that? So they can change some more names, So, do we know what Helme came from, what was before? Was that the original, was Helme the original name, or, was it something else? We don't know now. And that's Tolkien, putting Tolkien on the hot spot there. It's all right, him coming out with all these fancy names for Lord of the Rings. It's like he's invented an entire fucking dictionary. He's got an entire dictionary as Tolkien. Wow, Lord of the Rings, I've invented an entire new language of my own. It's the most intricate and detailed language known to mankind, but we ain't even, if they just put as much effort into getting all the place names for what they're meant to be from the Celtic era, we're probably more likely finding out from the Welsh, from Wales, from the people near to all this history, to find out, what it were called, if there's any references in there. But seeing though as Wales keep pretending to be separate and divided, and it's the Prince of Wales anyway, and then you keep getting Welsh adverts popping up, is Wales playing both sides? And then you've got the Scottish. The Scottish is meant to be the same prehistoric culture from, Iron Age and before, yet when you try and go onto groups there, you've got Moya Smiley, who's blocking everyone and deleting all the posts and comments. Scottish guy. And then the next thing, Neil Oliver's coming on, saying that, have the Scottish got issues with the English still, To be honest, they were right in the Irish groups, although they're a bit, they don't see why we should be posting about English sites when it's Irish sites, but because we want to find out the meanings and if there's any interpretation to the sites or references to the sites over here, because they're the only ones who have still got the language intact and the stories and references. That's why.